What's up, guys? I'm back with my weekly Wednesday live. This week I'm going to be talking about how to build muscle. So this is going to be the first in a two-part series. The first part that we're going to talk about today is all about training. Training is very important, as I'm going to explain. And then next week I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk about the nutrition side of things and a couple of other considerations like sleep and mindset and things like that. So first of all, I wrote in my side blurb, but basically a lot of people get scared away by the idea of building muscle, but building muscle is an important goal for a lot of people. They just might not actually realize it. Anytime you say, oh, I want my arms to look more toned, I want a bigger butt, I want more defined legs, maybe you want to look a certain way in a swimsuit or in a dress or something like that. Most of those goals require you to have at least a little bit of muscle in your frame. If you only lose weight and you don't have any muscle mass, you're not going to have the shape that most people are after when they have those sorts of aesthetic goals. So just keep that in mind. If you're worried about getting too muscular, there's always going to be a point from where you are now and to some future version of you that you think is too muscular, where you can say, okay, I'm happy with the way I look, I'm going to stop training in this way, I'm going to stop eating all these extra calories that I need. So I wouldn't worry about that. You can always pull the plug on this if you want to. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, what do you need to do when you're working out and your goal is to build muscle? So the first thing is that heavy strength training is absolutely crucial if you want to build muscle. So if you're trying to just lose weight, you can do that through diet alone. It's not necessarily ideal, it's not the way I would recommend it, but it is possible. But in order to build muscle, your body needs to be pushed. It needs to have a stimulus to force it to adapt and create new muscle tissue. So if you're not regularly lifting weights and you want to build muscle, you immediately need to start regularly lifting weights. This can look a lot of different ways depending on your schedule. So as you guys know, I'm really big on making things work, making them be realistic. So if you're currently not doing anything at all, you can certainly still start with just a couple of workouts a week and you're gonna see good progress from that. But if you've already been training somewhat regularly, I definitely would recommend working up to 4 to 6 lifting sessions per week. Now, before you freak out at the fact that I'm recommending 6 sessions per week, that would be more on the advanced end of things, and they can also be shorter sessions. So with building muscle, regular frequency is a lot more beneficial. So if you can only devote like a couple hours a week to train, but you have the option of splitting it up into smaller chunks that you do more frequently, you may actually get better results doing that if your goal is to build muscle. So when I say 6 sessions a week, that could be 6 20-minute or 30-minute sessions a week, but spaced throughout the week, so you're repeating training for certain muscle groups and certain movements, and that can give you better results if you're trying to build muscle than just training once or twice a week. So keep that in mind when you're establishing your training schedule. Now, I have a few training splits that I really like for building muscle. A training split just is the way that you divide up your workouts over the course of a week. So one of my favorites that I use with a lot of my clients is an upper and lower split. So this is typically going to take place over 4 days of training. You would have 2 upper body days and 2 lower body days. If you only have 3 days to train, you could do a push-pull leg split. So you would do all of your upper body pulling stuff on one day, upper body pushing on another day, and legs on a third day. I'm not the biggest fan of only training legs once a week. For most people, they're already not training legs a lot. This is especially true for guys, not to stereotype, but I'm going to stereotype a little. If you have small legs and you want them to grow and you only train them once a week, that's likely not going to be enough. So it's more ideal to have 2 leg days in the week. But again, if you only have 3 days to train or legs aren't a huge priority for you, then you can keep it to 3 days. One other thing that you can do when you have more training time or you're a little bit more advanced is a modified body part split. So again, I'm not the biggest fan of the traditional body part splits that you would see in like old school bodybuilding magazines. Those are geared more towards professional athletes, a lot of times that have some sort of performance enhancement to help them out. Most people are going to need more frequency, but what you can do is you can do 2 leg days in a week, and you can do 3 upper body days or 4 upper body days, and you can split them up in different ways. You can do pulling focus and pushing focus. You can do like the traditional chest and biceps or back and biceps or something like that. Just make sure that you're well balanced throughout the course of the week. So those would be some examples of ways you could split up your training week. You can also do full body sessions, but if you're going to be training a lot, full body sessions can be a little bit taxing, and you might have more time to do some of the isolation work that you may need to do, which I'm going to discuss in a second, if you split your days up by upper body and lower body at the very least. Just some things for you to consider. So what should you do in your actual workouts? Now, even though you're building muscle, I still would prioritize compound movement. So I still would make up the bulk of your training from things like squatting, hinging, pushing, and pulling. Those are still going to get you the most bang for your buck. The biggest difference between building muscle and building strength, though, is that the way you're going to try to tax your body is going to be a little bit different. So when you're trying to build strength, your goal is to move as much weight as you can as efficiently as possible. And when you're trying to build muscle, your goal is to tax your muscles essentially as much as possible. So this seems like it would be the same, but it's actually a little bit different. For example, if I was going to do a dumbbell bench press and I'm trying to train for strength, I'm going to use a particular setup. I'm going to always lock out my weights. I'm going to try to push the pushing portion of the lift really powerfully. I'm going to drive my feet into the floor, all these kinds of things. If I'm trying to grow my chest or grow my arms, I might use a slightly different position with my arms. I might drag out the lowering portion of the lift. I might not lock out the lift. There are all these different ways that I could manipulate the lift so that it would be more challenging for the particular muscle I'm trying to train. So all of this is to say that when you're trying to build muscle, you don't necessarily need to always be chasing PRs or lifting super heavy weights. Your workouts should be challenging, but they don't necessarily need to be challenging in terms of the absolute amount of weight that you can lift. So when you're doing your compound movements, you might experiment with some things I already said, like dragging out the lowering portion of a lift. So for example, if you're squatting, just to use a different example, you could sit down into the squat to a count of 3. Or you could do like squat and a half rep. So I've done this with people who don't have access to barbells. You do a full squat and then you come up halfway and then you go down and then you come up all the way. That's a way to make it more challenging. So playing around with those sorts of techniques while still using your compound movements can be useful. I definitely would not shy away from isolation work if you're trying to build muscle. So this is something that I've dramatically changed my mind about. I've talked about this before, but I used to be, when I was very, very steeped in powerlifting and also kind of new to lifting, and I thought that I knew everything. I thought that doing curls and doing shoulder raises and that kind of stuff was a big waste of time. But really, if your goal is to build muscle, most people are going to need some dedicated work. Most people are not that freak of nature you see on Instagram who only does chin-ups and rows and has massive biceps. So I definitely encourage you to add in this stuff in your workouts. The nice thing about isolation work, if you're doing it correctly, is that it's not super taxing on your body and it doesn't take as long to recover. So you could throw in a couple of sets of light curls at the end of every workout that you do during the course of a week and recover, versus you're not going to be able to do that with squats if you're really challenging yourself. So I would put your isolation work typically at the end for most people. Most people, I would do the compound stuff first, and then I would do the isolation stuff at the end. And I would really focus here on feeling the muscle you're trying to target working. So this is another important point when you're training for muscle growth versus training for strength. If you're doing an exercise like a curl, for example, and you don't feel your biceps working, then you're probably not stimulating your biceps in a way that's going to cause them to grow. So there are a few things that you can do. You can change the tempo of the exercise. You can change the angle. You may even need to pick a different exercise. But if you don't feel the muscle working, then you need to change something up. A lot of people go wrong with isolation work and get themselves into trouble because they're using way too much weight. So a curl is not a competition for how much weight you can lift poorly and jack up your elbows. It's a specific exercise to target your biceps. So check your ego, use less weight, and program these things intelligently, and you'll see progress while you're using them. So there are kind of 3 main things that we need to hit in the gym to see muscle growth, and I've already sort of talked about some of them, but I'm going to go into this a little more in depth. So the first thing is called mechanical tension. So basically this means that you need to put some stress on your muscles. You need to lift weights that are challenging. They don't need to be all-time PRs, but they do need to be challenging. You need to do a lot of sets and reps over a long time. The second thing is metabolic stress. So this is that burning feeling you get in your muscles when you're doing a set of like 20 reps and you feel like your arms are going to fall off. You can get this by doing higher reps, by doing some of the intensity techniques I mentioned, like slowing down certain portions of the lift. And then the third thing is muscle damage. So muscle damage is mostly what's causing you to be sore. You can do this, again, by dragging out certain portions of the lift and also by emphasizing exercises where there's a big stretch. So I really like Romanian deadlifts. I like them in general for strength as well, but especially for muscle, because you're really going to hit your hamstrings and your glutes, and there's going to be a huge stretch on the back end of the exercise. So that's going to really help you out. So make sure that you're kind of hitting all of those things in your training. Don't only, if you're a beginner, you can see real gains from just lifting and pushing yourself with weights, but if you're a little bit more advanced and your progress is solid, try experimenting with some of these intensity techniques, and that can also help you to build more muscle. Okay, so moving to the end here, how should you structure your sets and reps and things like that? So when you're building muscle, I have read in the research, and I've generally found with myself and my clients, that it's good to train in a really wide range of reps. So I'm typically not doing 1, 2, and 3 rep maxes with people, but we might be doing some heavy sets of 4 or 5 on a big barbell exercise, or on goblet squats or RDLs or something like that. And then we're also doing sets in the mid-range, a lot of sets in like the 8 to 12 range, maybe 6 to 10. That's a really great range where you can use a challenging weight, but you're still pushing yourself in terms of reps. And I'm also going to use sets that are a lot higher with people. I've used sets as high as 20, 25, or even more. Of course, you need to be smart with loading on that. If you're going to be doing higher reps like that, you can't be using a ton of weight. You need to keep the weight a little bit less so that you can keep good form as you're going through that. But I would encourage you to use a wide range of reps throughout your training. I think you'll find certain exercises work better for you in certain rep ranges than others, but that can be pretty individual. But don't be afraid to do really, really high rep sets. Don't be afraid to do some heavier work in the 5 to 8 range or something like that as well. And then last but not least, you want to always be trying to progress in some way. So since you're not chasing pure strength as a goal, it's okay if you're not just adding weight to the bar every week. You can add reps. You can slow things down. A lot of times that will make it a lot harder. You can just do the exact same thing you did the week before, but do it with better form, or do it with a better mind-muscle connection, and you're still making progress that way. So don't be just doing the same workout over and over and over. You can do the same program, but you want to always try to push yourself, try to take it to the next level, and see how you can challenge yourself. And if you get to a point where you can no longer do that, then it's probably time to cycle out an exercise or change up your program or something like that. That's typically going to be every 4 to 8 weeks, depending on how consistent you are in the gym. Alright, so just to summarize, I know I talked about a ton of stuff today, but some big picture concepts here. Building muscle is a little bit different than training for strength. Your goal is to challenge your muscles and to tax them instead of just lifting as much weight as you can. So you don't need to chase 1 rep maxes or PRs if you're trying to build muscle. I would encourage you to train in a wide variety of rep ranges, using a lot of different training techniques so that you're challenging yourself and you're putting new demands on your body and your muscles. I would still prioritize compound movements, big movements where you're using lots of different muscles and joints, but I would not be afraid to include isolation work pretty frequently throughout the week, depending on you and your unique body. But if you want to build muscle in your arms and shoulders, for example, you're probably going to have to do some isolation work for those body parts. I would definitely recommend training more frequently, like at least 4 sessions a week would be awesome, even a little bit more if you have more time or more experience. But again, work with what you can. If you're not training at all right now, 1 or 2 sessions or 3 sessions a week is certainly better than nothing. But try, if you're serious about this goal, to work up to a little bit more frequent training, even if the sessions are a little bit shorter. So I hope that was helpful for you guys. Again, I think that building muscle is a really awesome goal. I think a lot of people are trying to build muscle, but maybe they don't want to say that because of some of the stereotypes surrounding it. But it's a lot of fun. It can be one of the most empowering things that you can do in the gym. So I hope that you'll try some of these things out and you'll consider them. And then check back next week because I'm going to be talking about nutrition. So training is the most important thing, but in order to actually build muscle, we need to make sure our body has the fuel and the tools that it needs to do that. So thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and pop into the comments or shoot me a DM. And otherwise, I will see you next week. Have a good one.